Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles Lang. With me, as always, my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and note-taker, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob?
I'm still not a note-taker. I don't know where you got that from again.
I got that from last week when you had a bunch of notes.
Yeah, but I'm not your note-taker.
No,
you know.
Well,
you say
you
my
better
co-host,
start.
so it makes me sound like I'm your note-taker. I take my own notes, which isn't really a note-taker.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
I'm just writing it out.
Yeah, writing your notes down. That's what a note-taker is.
But are notes, are they really notes if they're your own thoughts and not like someone else speaking, you know?
Yes.
I'm not sure.
I think they are. What else would it be? A diary?
It's a outline.
Okay, I guess an outline. I mean, a story.
I don't know. You're right. They're notes, but
right.
you know.
Well, I have a TV show.
I'm not your note taker.
No,
just want to point that out.
Everyone was wondering, and now they all know. You're
Want
not
them all to know.
Yeah. Well, I have a.
There'd be a title for all of his shows if I was the note taker.
Fair enough. That makes sense. Well, I have a title for this week's show. Believe it or not. And it's actually, I think, a pretty good title. But you may think it's too long and wordy. It's only 2 words, but you know how Jake is, everyone. So this week, I have a show called Rapturous Depths. Say it again, Rapturous Depths.
Okay.
And it is about...
Like rapture as in the everybody goes up to heaven or whatever?
Yeah, and then depth as in the depths of the ocean.
Okay.
So it's about a universe. It's set in a universe in which the world ended on the surface world ended. We don't know how specifically it ended, but it did. And that has led to human beings moving into the depths of the ocean. They've moved down into the very bottom of the ocean. And they've evolved, and the world ended centuries ago. And so people have been living down at the bottom of the ocean for centuries. And so they've naturally, their cultures and societies and even their physicality has changed and evolved to adapt to their new environment. And so there are 3, subspecies of human at this point, right? In the world's chronology. So there's and they all have fun little names. So the first ones are called proto, and they are, as you would imagine, proto-humans, regular, what we would see as regular average humans. They look like us, they sound like us, they have the same variety of colors and hair colors and skin colors and sizes and shapes and all that stuff. They look like us.
Okay.
That's a proto. And they have been kept looking and acting and sounding like humans now by, their civilization is basically what, the evolution of the ultra-rich and ultra-powerful who established colonies on the sea floor, but they made them as surface world-like as possible. So they have artificial sunlight, it looks like a cul-de-sac, basically, right? If you were in their home, you would have no idea you were at the bottom of the ocean. And that paired with various genetic manipulation done by the government to keep people from changing has, created this proto-human who is, the regular Earth now human. And our second kind of people, and this is the most, there are the most of these kinds, is an Evo. Right? And these are evolved humans. These are people who have allowed their genetics and their physicality to be altered by the ocean depths. They're shorter. They have large eyes. They're very pale. They have lots of hair, right? Because it's so cold at the ocean depths that they have hair, but it's otter hair, so it wicks water very well. It's waterproof, But they're very hairy, short, pale, bug-eyed people, and they're most humans. And they're exactly, they're the people that you're going to see most of. They're what society's mostly made of. And then there is the third and most strange type of person, subspecies of human being, and that would be the anthro. And the anthro are people who, through severe genetic mutation and manipulation, have been their DNA has been combined and spliced with deep sea creatures' DNA to make them like part human, part animal, right? And so that they are the only species that are able to, the only subspecies that are able to breathe underwater and withstand the natural ocean depths without some sort of technology to help them, right? And you're anthro, like, you know, anthropomorphic, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's animals. They're talking animal people. And these are, you know, the three species that live at the bottom of the ocean that are, like, all, you know, human-level intelligent, and they just, you know, have to get along, and they all, you know, it's a bit of a struggle. There have been some wars. There's been some prosecution and persecution of various groups at different times, but, you know, in general, they live in peaceful harmony, right? The protos stay away from the evos, and the evos stay away from the anthros, and the anthros stay away from the protos. You know, everybody stays away from everybody, and that manages to keep everything, you know, working. And so I want this show to be kind of a sort of pseudo post-apocalyptic, like 40s adventure serial style vibe, you know?
Oh.
Because we've been doing a lot of serialized...
40s.
Yeah, like 40s black and white Flash Gordon style stuff. The stuff Star Wars was based off of. And so we've been doing a lot of serialized stuff recently, like with our last two shows, they've been pretty serialized, and I know I've been doing a lot of heavy serialized stuff, so I want to do something that's a bit lighter.
I mean, almost all of our shows are serialized.
Yeah,
so yeah.
I want to do a bit lighter, a bit fun, you know, just each episode ends, and we're not, maybe not the status quo, but everybody kind of ends where they started up, you know, maybe with a bit of change here, a bit of change there, right? And so it follows the crew of the Wailing Horse. Like whaling as in, I'm whaling. And horse as in, it's a seahorse. So it's gonna be like, it's the Wailing Horse. Then we're gonna look on the side, and it's a submarine. But it's gonna have a seahorse painted on the side, and it's screaming. And the crew of the Wailing Horse fight to survive the harsh realities of the ocean floor. Vicious pirates, corrupt governments, horrific mutants, strange cultures, and dogmatic cults are just some of the dangers they will encounter in the murky brine of the Rapturous Depths. That was the little tagline I had written up. Yeah, so that's kind of the vibe we're going for. So it's going to be a fun little adventure show, where our characters, they're going to have some charisma, some, you know, banter, and they're going to get into an adventure and all that stuff. And so now I'm going to introduce you to the crew. The crew of the Wailing Horse. Our first crew member is Tron. It's Tran, but the A has like two little dots over it, so it says Tron, not Tran.
Ah.
Yeah. And he is the captain of the ship.
I believe they're called.
Umlaut. Okay.
I think.
I wasn't sure if that was an umlaut or not. I don't know. So he is an Evo. He's an evolved human. So again, short, pale, big eyes, furry. He is the captain of the ship. He is an inexperienced leader, a young man who heavily relies on his first mate. He's a former politician disgraced after a love affair who has turned to the lowest form of work, salvage. So basically, the Wailing Horse scrapes the bottom of the sea floor for any salvage of like ancient human, you know, society, right? So they'll like pick through old ships that have sunk, you know, and because the world's ended, there's a bunch of shit at the bottom of the sea floor, like a bunch of stuff you wouldn't expect to be there, like malls and stuff, you know? Like I don't know, what else? A movie theater, and they have Barbie, and they watch Barbie. Maybe that could be an episode.
Barbie's playing, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, inexperienced former politician. So he's very good with his words, but he's not really, he doesn't have that intuition that a leader should have. He's kind of bandies about, he prefers to solve problems with words rather than violence, but if there is violence, he leaves it up to the rest of his crew. He doesn't really partake in the violence. He's a little scared of the violence. And then we move on to his first mate, Cleo, who is a proto-human. She's a former military hero turned mercenary who served with Tron's father in the latest war. And I haven't thought about who the war should be against. I was thinking maybe it could be a war between the Anthros and the Evos, and Tron joined even though he didn't need to because neither of his people were at war, but Tron's father joined because, he believes in the Evos, point of view, or maybe he fights for the Anthros and Cleo gets captured because she was fighting for the Protos, and then he, treats her with respect and eventually helps her escape, and so she, has a life debt indebted to him, but he dies in the war, and so the life debt moves on to his son, Tron. Yeah, that's the history. So Cleo is an older woman who uses intimidation to, keep her crew in line, but she does understand the benefits of having good morale. And so she, kind of leaves. Basically what she does is she's bad cop and Tron is good cop. So he's the one who keeps the crew happy, he keeps them fed and keeps them entertained and all that stuff, and Cleo keeps them in line and keeps them disciplined. And she's perfectly happy with that. She doesn't mind that being her position on the ship. Then we have Zeke. Zeke is an Anthro, and he's a mechanic turned mob enforcer. He's 50% basking shark and serves as the muscle of the ship. Do you know what a basking shark is?
Nope.
So it's a shark that it doesn't, its teeth, it has teeth, but its teeth aren't really how it gets prey. It, opens its mouth really, really wide and just, kind of sucks it up like a whale,
Okay.
And so he's, a big, weird, he's kind of like King Shark, but think of King Shark with a man-sized head. He's just a regular-sized head. And if he opens his mouth, it can open to be, 3 times the size of his own head. He's a weird-looking thing, but he is the muscle for the ship as well as the external engineer, so he fixes anything that's happening on the outside of the ship, because the other characters aren't able to, go outside the ship without putting on, this big clunky suit to, make sure they don't drown or get crushed by the ocean depths. He's got a heart of gold that pumps cold blood. He cares for his crew, but is often working multiple angles. So, if they're taking a job transporting let's say a shipment of gold from one city to another city. Gold's not really a useful thing in this universe, but let's just say it's gold. He's, setting up a secondary deal to transport something else, or maybe he's planning on skimming the top, a bit off every gold bar, and so, he will have a lot of gold left over. And it's just enough gold that they
when you mean skimming off the top, you mean he's literally cutting a little chunk off
exactly.
The top?
He's taking a sander and just sanding
shaving it. That'd be cool if he had a little razor and he just sort of shave it. I don't know if you could shave gold like that. I don't think you can, but had something sharp where you could just shave a little bit off the top.
Yeah.
So instead of actually taking a bar, he's literally shaving a little bit off the top.
Just a little bit off the top, and assuming nobody will notice. But then they get to the place and they weigh it, and turns out there's 3 gold bars worth of, weight missing. And then the crew, they get, held up, and Zeke has to confess and then save them, or whatever. That could be a potential episode. And then our next character is Zara, named after an ancient goddess. She is Evo. She's the internal engineer and the group cheerleader. She's chippy, excitable, and a young genius with a fascination with the old world that borders on obsession. She can often be found in the bowels of the ship, watching ancient films, listening to ancient music, and reading ancient books. There was a little joke in there because her name's Zara, like the people that make handbags. but it's, so far divorced from that people have begun to think that that's a goddess. That was a goddess, because they, there's so much stuff that has her name on it. So yeah, Zara is kind of, she's the youngest, she's the most impressionable, and she, like I said, she's the chipper one who keeps the crew's morale up by, reminding them, we're all friends and we're all family and we're gonna get through this together. And then our final character is Healer Hamage. That's his name. They don't have doctors in this universe. They call them healers. And so he was a proto-human, but because he's kind of like a mad scientist situation, he performed experiments on himself to turn him into an anthro. So Zeke looks like a shark man. Zeke is 50-50. Hamage is maybe 25% animal. Like maybe he's mantis shrimp or something. What's that shrimp that can like punch really hard? Pistol shrimp. He's 25% pistol shrimp, let's say.
You've done this before. What? Something else was a pistol shrimp.
Pistol shrimps are great animals. And so, yeah, he was living peacefully in proto-society, but he often found himself pushing up against the morals and ethics of their scientific communities, because he, it is our society just 300 years from now and totally isolationist and run by the richest people on the planet. So it's, they're kind of, the protos hate the evos and the anthros. They think they're disgusting, immoral, horrible little things. And so he was not so convinced of that and started performing experiments on himself. But, the first few were unnoticeable changes, right? Like maybe he grew, a little vestigial claw, like out of where his belly button was or whatever. But he kept experimenting and kept tinkering with his own genetics until eventually he was unrecognizable. He was too far gone, and so he was banished from the proto-civilization and forced to wander the sea floor until he came upon the crew of the Wailing Horse and decided that he could work as their medical officer as long as they allowed him to continue his experiments, right? So that's our crew. Zara, Zeke, Cleo, Hamage, and Tron. And now I am going to tell you about their first adventure. And it's it's a pretty tame one. It's just pirates, right? Because that's what you do when you're with your pilot. You do kind of a basic one. Get people like kind of wedged into it, get them invested in the characters, right? Before you start introducing all of the crazy weird shit. So it starts ever normally with the Wailing Horse scuttling across the bottom of the sea, picking apart old world relics. And it's like, it's a submarine, right? But it's not, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a post-apocalyptic submarine. So you take a 40s, like World War II submarine, and you like shove it full of a bunch of weird like underwater technology that was developed after the world fell apart. That's what you're gonna get with the Wailing Horse. So we would need some real like concept artists to bump out what it actually looks like. But just picture a submarine shaped thing. Okay. And so they're scuttling across the bottom of the seafloor, having, some banter, some witty dialogue, repertoire, exactly, you know how it is. And they're just talking, they're picking apart, old world relics, and they're finding cool things. Maybe we should make a joke. It's like, look at this shirt. They spelled enough wrong. It's, I am Kenuff? That doesn't make any sense. We do something silly like that. And then they get stuck. This will happen a lot. They get stuck a lot because the Wailing Horse is not a very good vessel, and they don't know what they get stuck in. It's this enormous metal ring, right? And they have no frame of reference. They have no idea what this is, but us, as the modern, viewing public, would understand that this ring is, in fact, the target logo. It fell off of a target location, and the middle part fell out, and so they got stuck in it. And so they're stuck. Zeke is outside when they get stuck. And he's trying to unstick them and break the thing when all of a sudden these harpoons fire out from another vessel that they hadn't seen. This enormous black ship sticks its harpoons into them and starts pulling them, dragging them away from the depths up towards, not towards the surface, but more towards the middle of the ocean, where this vessel is able to, get at them. And they're, the whole crew is stuck inside of the submarine as it's being dragged up, except for Zeke, who's holding on to the side of the submarine as they're dragging it up. Just keep that in mind. And so they are boarded by a crew of pirates led by Captain Curry, who stands there. He's got an orange shirt, green pants, and a trident. So obviously, pirates do what pirates do. They kidnap the whole crew, they lock them in the brig, right? They start looting through the whole ship, taking whatever they want. And they're like, this sucks, this place sucks, this ship is awful, and you guys don't have anything good. And so Captain Curry calls up Tron to discuss terms, like, what are we gonna do with you guys? Because your ship isn't good enough for us to sell. You don't have anything good enough on the ship, so, what are we gonna do with you? Are we gonna kill you? Or are we maybe gonna keep you as slave labor? What are we gonna do? And you're the captain, so you have to decide. You have to help me decide. And that's how the conversation begins, but rather quickly, Tron is able to figure out that the ship that Captain Curry runs has no name. And so the conversation eventually devolves into them just trying to figure out what name for the ship. Like, what should they name the ship? And they're like getting drunk. They're sipping sherry in the captain's quarters, and it's like this big, elaborate room with a fireplace and all this stuff. Fireplace it doesn't have fire in it, right? Obviously, it's got like an electrical panel that looks like fire, but they kind of just like start talking and having fun, and they like become good friends over this conversation, right? In which they're trying to figure out the name of the ship, and they come up with a whole bunch of names, and we'll probably, sneak in some fun Easter eggs, right? Well, you should call it the Black Pearl or whatever, it's some fun little Easter eggs. And while this is happening, the whole crew is stuck in the brig, and they're just like sweating. They don't know what's gonna happen. They think they're either gonna die or be forced to work for these pirates, and they're all like lecherous creeps, And the pirate crew is made up of, Evos, Anthros, and Protos as well. So it's like, they're all like, everybody's looking at them, and you get like a weird fish guy, and he's like trying to mac on Cleo, and she like breaks his finger, right? Shit like that. When all of a sudden, from the darkness of the pirate ship's hold, arrives a massive man who kills two of the pirates. It's Zeke. He was able to make it into the ship because this is an old, like, Cold War submarine, and so there are torpedo, like, I don't know what you call it, chambers. Let's call it a torpedo chamber in the ship that don't have any torpedoes in them. So he was able to like crawl through them and like bust out into the ship and like get in, and he helps his crew escape. And it's this bloody battle that's intercut with Tron and Captain Curry just like sharing drinks and laughing and whatever. And this like horrific battle. And they're all just like using like shovels and buckets and stuff, and this like very bloody and messy, and it's all in a submarine, so it's all really cramped. It's all just hallways and hallways and hallways, and they're just like it's really bloody and dangerous. And they eventually get some swords and some guns, but the guns in this universe work on pneumatic pressure rather than ballistics, because you can't really have combustion at the bottom of the ocean. Like, where are you gonna get the gunpowder from? So it's, their specialty, like, think about it like a flintlock pistol, like single shot guns, that sort of thing. At least that's what the pirate crew has. And then, you know, as the battle is finished and the crew, you know, the crew of the Wailing Horse make it onto the bridge, you know, like the meeting place for the ship. They make it up there just as Tron and Captain Curry walk out of the ship together, or walk out of the captain's quarters together, like arm in arm, just like they're laughing and holding on to each other. And Captain Curry has decided to allow his new friends to leave. You know, he's gonna let Tron and his crew go. They can have all their stuff back because, you know, it's always good to have friends, and Tron is, you don't meet very many good conversationalists here in the depths, and you're a good conversationalist. You're a fun guy, and hopefully our paths will cross again. And as he's saying this, he walks out and sees like his entire crew has been slaughtered in the most violent, horrible way possible. And then he's like, what? And just as he's about to like get angry or raise his sword or his arm or whatever, Cleo just shoots him right in the head. Just like, bam, dead, immediately. And they, like, Tron is kind of put out by this, but he's like, oh, whatever. He takes, like, the rings off of Captain Curry's fingers because he likes them. And they just, like, gather all their stuff, take some loot from the pirate ship, and they leave. And that's the end of the episode. You know, that's what we're doing. This is the kind of show we're having. It's a little bit of dark comedy, a little bit of adventure, a little bit of action, right? And so that was episode 1, the pilot. Episode 2, the Wailing Horse arrives at a small settlement, Mariana, that specializes in mining and transport, as well as plenty of criminal enterprise. So Cleo and Tron decide to attempt to set up a job with the local government, right? This is a small town, so they go and they see the mayor, and he, you know, butters them up, and I'm trying to describe the civilizations, right? Like, the way that the Protos live is very different from the Evos. So the Protos live in, like, those big domed, like, not houses, like, places. Like, you know, any diagram of what civilization will look like on Mars, right? They always have, like, it's a
big dome underwater.
Yeah, exactly. It's a huge dome
like
underwater.
Like Atlantis in a lot of media has the big dome.
Exactly. That's how the Protos live, because it's the closest they can get to, you know, regular Earth stuff. Whereas
I figured it was a little bit like Bioshocky.
Yeah.
You know, like the city underwater.
Exactly. Whereas the Evos, they live a bit less, because they're just like the average person. Their way of living varies drastically depending on where you are, but it's a bit less concerned about being wet. Like, they're not bothered by being wet or you know, damp at all, because it's like their natural state. So everything's like a bit leakier, and it's not as refined, but it still like has oxygen. They haven't like evolved past the need for their lungs and oxygen in the air, right? They still need air. So, you know, everything has air.
You could have a funny joke at some point where like you know, somebody comes into the house, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, instead of drying their shoes off, they wet their shoes.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be good.
They go on. Just a little gag.
Yeah, just a little gag.
Slight gag.
But yeah, and it's like, think of Hobbiton, right? It's like basically Hobbiton, but put it underwater and replace wood with metal. That's how the Evos live, and that's what Mariana is like. And so the Cleo and Tron are, you know, they're meeting with the local government. They're schmoozing. Tron is obviously much better at schmoozing than Cleo. She's very direct and to the point and very gruff, right? And so they, you know, Tron is able to make a good enough impression that the local government has hires them to transport precious metals to a local city, Babylon. That's the local city. We'll go to it at some point, but not right now. While this is happening, Zara and Zeke discover the anthros in this city, in this town, that are being used as slave labor. and forced to mine oil, precious metals, and algae that they turn into food, because the anthros are able to breathe underwater and withstand the ocean's pressures without any sort of technology. And so they are, being taken...
The great heat of the thermal vents.
Exactly. The great heat. That's good. I like that. The great heat. So, they're being used as slave labor. And so, while all this is happening, Haymitch joins a chess tournament because he was bored. And he doesn't like any of this stuff. Like, he's not interested in winning. He's not interested in revolution or work. He's interested in being in a chess tournament. But chess is weird now. Like, it's strange, and he's used to proto chess, which is basically just regular human chess, but it's like weird now because they don't have knights or horses, in this
they have seahorses.
Exactly. All the names have been changed, and some of the rules have been changed, but it's still basically the same game. Because these
you could have some sort of weird thing with like because it floats in water.
Exactly. Yeah. These people. So
you could have you go up and down.
Mm-hmm. These people have never lived in a world where you aren't able to move, 3-dimension or 4-dimensionally up, whatever, where you aren't able to move up and down and left and right, right? So the pieces can move differently, and so he just gets super frustrated. Haymitch is kind of the comedy side story to this episode, because he enters the adults chess tournament and he completely fails. He enters the masters tournament because he was a chess master back in the day, and then he gets demoted down to the intermediate, then to the beginner, and then he ends up having to play children. He ends up in the child's chess tournament. But that's the comedy side story. The real story is that Zeke and Zara are able to convince, and not convince, they join the revolution of the Anthros against the Mariana population, or Mariana government. And they, begin fighting back against the slave masters, and they start, sabotaging mining operations and destroying, things that this city needs to survive. And so Chloe and Tron are hired. They said they're told, hey, you can make this delivery if you take care of these terrorists. But neither of the duos know that the other is on the other side, right? So eventually there'll be this big battle, at the bottom of the sea, and there'll be all these people in their suits, their underwater suits with their harpoon guns and their pneumatic pistols and stuff. And Tron and Cleo will be on the front lines, and Tron will kind of be hiding behind Cleo and shaking, and Cleo will be ready to die in battle, until eventually they realize that they're fighting their crew members and stuff. And so they decide to, they are obviously, Tron and Cleo are not told exactly what's going on. They are told that they're, workers that have, been corrupted by terroristic thoughts and ideology and are attacking innocent people. They're not told that they're slaves when Cleo when Cleo finds out they're slaves, she's like, we're not fighting anymore. Tron's kind of not really all that bugged about it. He's like, oh, well, world's not perfect. Whatever, what are you gonna do? The sea's not perfect. But Cleo's like, we're not fighting anymore, and they go back and they install a new leader, right? Maybe one of the revolutionaries that Zara and Zeke know is able to give this impassioned speech that rallies the people behind her, and it'll be Mariana's first anthro politician, and she runs the place, or anthro governor, right? And that's the end of episode 2. Episode 3, the gang gets stranded at the bottom of the sea, held in place by the corpse of a colossal squid that they killed. So
Squidward.
Yeah, they're going on they're doing their thing. They're scuttling around the bottom of the ocean looking for salvage, right? When they start getting attacked by this colossal squid, and they utilize all of their, all the weapons that are built into the ship that have, And Zeke goes out and Cleo go out into the water, and they start fighting the squid, and they're able to eventually kill it, and they all like rejoice and they cheer and whatever. And just as Cleo and Zeke get back into the ship, the squid falls onto it and just like sticks it in place. And this is the anthology episode. So they're, stuck down here. They have no way to get out. There's no escape. And so they just start telling stories. And they, swap a few stories about each other's past. Like maybe Cleo is able to tell a story about Tron's father. Like we find out that she was captured and he was kind to her and helped her escape. And so that's why she owes Tron. We're able to find out about Zeke's past, as he was a mechanic who was turned into a mob enforcer because of his enormous size. And then eventually he was recruited by Cleo because, he was like, maybe he was hired to kill her, and she, beat him up or something, and he was like impressed, and then she was like, why are you doing this? I know you're only like 15. She's able to tell, because anthros are kind of hard to tell their ages because they're half animal, and I don't know if you've ever tried to tell a dog's age or a seal's age by looking at it, but it's pretty fucking difficult. Or a shark's age. So, we swap some stories about like that sort of thing, but then we also swap stories that are like fictional within this universe, like ghost stories and monster stories, like, their version of the like urban legends, basically, right?
Yeah.
And that's
like
basically
the Submariner. He's like the boogeyman of that world.
Yeah, he's like the boogeyman. He goes up into your
a human from the past, an immortal metal man that traverses the bottom of the sea searching for souls to take down into the deeper depths.
To the deeper depths of the trench. The trenches. They call them the trenches. That's hell. They don't have hell anymore. They call them the trenches. Let's say. I don't know. I just made that up right now, but that's most of the show is just me making things up on the spot.
Well, that is all of... Oh, okay. Never mind. I was going to say that's all of our shows, but not on the spot necessarily.
Yeah. Not necessarily. But then eventually, after like they've bonded a little bit, we've gotten a little bit of spooky ghost stories, the squid corpse begins to fall apart. It begins to bust open and break. And they're like, what's happening? Is there something tearing at it? Is something ripping it apart? No. Turns out this colossal squid was colossally pregnant. And its babies are erupting out of its corpse.
Erupting. Oh god.
Just tearing it apart. It's fucking horrible. But they're able to escape, and they're like, the beautiful, cycle of life. And then, like, in between bouts of vomiting at how disgusting everything is, they're like, the cycle of life. And that's the end of episode 3. And I was only able
Wait, how do they get shot back up? Is that how they get out?
No, they just the squid falls apart because it's torn apart by its babies, so they are able to escape because the squid was holding them down. And the last episode I have written, because
it's pretty gross.
It is pretty gross. This is the last page of the notebook, so I had nowhere else to write, so I couldn't come up with any more episodes. But the last episode I have written, episode 4, is it's after a successful mission. The crew decides to treat themselves to an extravagant vacation at a luxury hotel / casino in the proto-city of Atlantis. Right? Because regular, average, modern humans are so devoid of imagination that if they have a city underwater, they're gonna call it Atlantis. Like, doesn't matter.
And they're all called Atlantis.
They're all
their
called
cities
Atlantis.
underwater.
Yeah, they're all called Atlantis.
There's New Atlantis, Atlante, Atlantis. Like, they're all just variations.
So yeah. And they go to a casino, and usually Evos and Anthros aren't allowed in proto-cities, but if you pay like if you pay a fee, you're able to get like special, ID cards or whatever that allow you,
like
you won't
a
be
visa.
deported. Exactly. But that doesn't mean that the people have to be kind or nice to you, right? At all. And so they are in the city, and Cleo is the only one who doesn't experience any form of racism, right? They all like are discriminated against for their various, differences from the population. right? Zara and Tron are like called like betrayers of the human race, right? They've allowed themselves to be, altered and changed rather than like maintaining their pure humanness. Whereas Hamage and Zeke are called like monsters, filthy beasts, right? And meanwhile, but that's not all. They're also like enjoying their vacation. They're at a casino. They're doing casino stuff. They're playing craps. They're playing blackjack. We get to see weird underwater casino games. You get to see an octopus man, like a man who's 50% octopus, 50% man, and he's a dealer, right? That sort of thing. And while this is all happening, Cleo is she's meeting back up with some old war friends of hers, right? And remember, the war was against the Anthro people, right? And so her old war buddies are very anti-Anthro. They don't like it. They're pure humanists. That's their thing. And so they are their meetup, and they share a few laughs, they have a few drinks. Cleo laughs for the first time, in the show, we see her laugh, and she's having a good time. And while this is happening, after a few days, the rest of the crew is we're leaving. We don't want to be here anymore. Everyone's super fucking racist, and we lost a bunch of money. But Cleo doesn't really want to leave. She's enjoying it. She's having a good time. She's hanging out with people that are like her, because she's the only she's the only proto on the ship. The only one who even comes close is Hamage, who was a proto before he changed himself because he's a mad scientist. And so she's they get into a big argument, Cleo and the rest of the crew, and the rest of the crew is angry at her and they leave her. And her war buddies see this as an opportunity to get Cleo back into the fold because they've missed her. She was an incredible general. She was this, genius strategist, and they think that she's wasting her time and her life, helping these lesser thans, these abominations on a salvage vessel. Is there anything lower? And so the war buddies decide, what we're gonna do? They kidnap the whole crew, right? They kidnap them and they tie them up, right? They're gonna get on the ship, and then their ship's flooded with knockout gas or whatever. They're tied up, and Cleo is she's told, you're gonna have a surprise. It's gonna be a big surprise. It's gonna change your life, whatever. And she thinks, maybe I'm going to stay here for the rest of my life. Maybe I'll stay in Atlantis. And then she walks in and sees her crew in front of her. And they're like, all right, you got to kill him. You have to prove your loyalty to us. You really want to stay here? You want to be one of us? You have to kill these abominations, these filthy degenerates. End your connection with them for once and for all. And it's a very harrowing scene, right? As we see Cleo and she picks up the gun, and you think she's gonna do it. There is a genuine look in her eye, she may actually do this. And then at the very last second, she turns around, shoots down her old war buddies, throws the gun at one that she couldn't hit because of you only get one shot, and strangles him. And maybe the one that she strangles was her old lover. Somebody she had a really deep connection with, and she's just no, this isn't me anymore. And so her loyalty to her crew and to the Wailing Horse wins out in the end of the day, and she kills her old life, and embraces her new life at the bottom of the sea with this ragtag group of people. And maybe it's yeah. And then they return and they get on the ship, and they maybe we have one final thing that Cleo's I know you guys really didn't like that place, so I got you guys a surprise. And she presses a button, and it just one of the sections just starts to flood. She blows up or she lets the water in, and it just starts to flood, and it's that's gonna ruin it. So no one's gonna die, it's just gonna be an inconvenience, but fuck those people. And everybody's Cleo, you old dog. Ha ha ha. And then that's the end of the episode. Sorry. Something needs to be closed. But yeah, that's the end of the episodes that I have written down. Do you have any ideas? Any ideas for episodes we could do?
I maybe some of the tales that you tell in that one episode where they're underwater. they run into this shit. They were like some of the ghost tales you come up with.
Yeah.
There. Like they actually later, they've run into something and they're like, nah, this couldn't be. No. There's no way. Like they run into this submariner.
Mm-hmm. But he's actually a really nice guy.
Yeah, and he's like actually, man, I don't know if you want to make him actually like an immortal from, like he's a Vandal Savage type.
Maybe he's like
from caveman times, and he's.
I was gonna say maybe he's been kept alive by because you said he has a metal suit, and he,
Yeah.
Maybe he's been kept alive by his metal suit, RoboCop style. So he lifts up his helmet, and it's all like a bunch of wires and tubes going to his face, but he's just like really kind and like nice.
Or maybe his face, it looks normal, so they think he's like, oh, they're like he's a human, but like the rest of his body is where all the crazy stuff is.
All the crazy bionics and stuff. I like that. I was thinking maybe they can go to the Arctic Sea and meet aliens. Like they find a UFO. And it's just like, I don't know what they would do with the UFO, but I'm sure we could find something for them to do. Meeting up with cults. I was thinking that they have like a cult that worship like old world like pop culture.
Okay.
Like the cult of McFly, and it's like a cult,
Marty McFly.
A cult that worships Marty McFly, and they all dress like him, and their head priest is dressed like Doc.
Yeah, because they think if they worship it enough, they can get a time machine and
they can go through
Marty
the DeLorean.
McFly will come back and save them.
All is possible through the DeLorean.
Yeah, they have an old DeLorean there that they keep in like a safe.
Mm-hmm. And
our crew needs to steal it because the DeLorean has like a very rare engine part that they need for their sub, and they're like stuck there.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Have to go through this Marty McFly cult.
Exactly, and they all skateboard. But they also don't know how to skateboard because they've all lived underwater for so long that it's just like, it's lost in knowledge, so they really suck at it. And it's just like them laying on the board and kind of pushing with their hands,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my show. Rapturous Depth.
Rapturous Depth. I liked it. It was different from the other stuff we've been doing.
Yeah.
Pretty unique idea. I like it.
I thought it was fun.
Very fun.
I like the underwater because I was like, I should go in space. I do space too much. What's the opposite of space? Ocean.
Water.
Water.
Because that's down and that's up.
Exactly. You know how my brain works, Jake. But yeah, thanks for listening. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles Long. With me, as always, has been my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and note-taker, Jacob McLaughlin. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat. And remember, we will be here next week with a brand new televisual series for you to imagine with us in our own collective mind space. Thank you, and have a good day.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.